your daddy loves you. See, your daddy loves his girl. Hey, now. See, your daddy loves you, loves you, loves you. See, your daddy loves his girl, loves his girl, loves his girl. Love you, little chocolate girl. Do you love you, little chocolate girl? I love my little chocolate girl. I love that girl, 'cause she keep me thinking the sweet things about tomorrow. She keep me holding on to sweet things tomorrow. Remember that I love you. Please remember that I love you. See your daddy.
Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Company on Power Talk, thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And, there have been certain demarcation points on this program for me. I started my show 9 years ago because of the visceral and racist reactions to Barack Obama as president. And I realized that after talking to pundits and lawyers and analysts and people like that in some ways these problems that we face, especially as it relates to human rights, equal rights, and the color of and skin color, it's much easier not to solve these problems than to actually solve them. And so I reached inside the records that I covet, and I picked out and pulled out the musicians like Richard Davis and like Charlie Persip and all these heavy black jazz musicians who could tell me the truth about the cultural bias and racism that exists in this country. That word racism is hard for me because I believe we're all one human race, but this country has really set the bar. There's always been a color bar here. And anyway, after 1,500 radio interviews, I get a chance today to speak to the offspring of really a genius poet, a guy I got a chance to see only one time in my life, but his music is, it just will continue. It continues to hold and stand the test of time. It's just groove music. It's funky. The lyrics are so on point, and we sorely miss his voice, and I think more importantly, the void in the fact that who is the next Gia Scott-Heron? We will ask these questions and more to my next guest, Gia Scott-Heron. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here.
I am so touched and honored. I had a chance to go to, it was a little bit serendipity, but I was going to a concert in Ardmore, Pennsylvania this last summer, and I wound up crashing with someone who is just really kind. He put a cot out for me. I didn't have the dough to spend it on a hotel, so I wound up in West Philly, and then I went to the concert, and the next day we were hanging out, having coffee, and this guy's like, hey man, I have all these incredible not Polaroid, just photos that you need to see. And he started to show me pictures of jazz concerts with Dizzy Gillespie and Ella Fitzgerald and all those people, and then he pulled out these photos from this club in Philadelphia with your dad and his band, and he gave them all to me. He gave me all these legendary shots. And, I'm not that familiar with I've interviewed Larry McDonald, the great conga player who played with your dad, and Brian Jackson twice, but a lot of the other accompanists who were just like ridiculous players. I'm not that hip to them, but so now my older daughter and I, we went to the store maybe 3 months ago or more, and picked out all these they had like this thrift store. There was like all these antiquated wooden frames, and so I have these pictures of your dad all over my house now. It's like the coolest vibe. So when I appreciate you going there with me because it's really important on a lot of different levels, and I just really wanted to start by asking you. I've gone back and transcribed my second interview with Brian, and I'm pulling up quotes from the Neville brothers in New Orleans about the kind of just outright hardships and cultural bias that they had to encounter in their lives, and quite frankly that we as a society have been encountering for a long time. And I look now at this pandemic, and I look at the buffoonery of these individuals who are trying to run our country, and I just say, you know what? As tragic and as horrible as this is, because there's a large portion of African Americans who are really suffering much more than most people, and that's sort of more of a that's a whole. I mean, if you really think about it, the denial of really appropriate health care, dietary needs, education, all this stuff, the stuff that has always held back black-skinned people, again rises to the surface with this pandemic. And I just wonder, I thought to myself, boy, what would it look like to have someone like Gia Scott-Heron or people that make up a larger representation of America leading this charge against the pandemic? Would we have these huge pushes for big pharmaceuticals with unknown consequences and lies and deception and greed and and I have to thank your dad, and I have to thank people like Brian for opening my head a little bit, because this is just stuff that's not taught in the school system. And I just wonder, when you look at the TV every day, I mean, if you do, is this just another example of our country just being unable to accept the fact that we are a completely multi-ethnic people?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, there's a lot packed into what you said, so let's just try to unpack it bit by bit.
Please.
Because you mentioned that there are leaders that are trying to run our country, and that's not what they're doing. Like, please don't lie to yourself and say that. What they're doing is they're running our country into the ground.
I mean, believe me, language is a funny thing. So I know.
Sure,
go ahead.
Sure. Well, my dad was a wordsmith, so as such, being of his lineage, like, I look at words very closely, and I try to choose my words as carefully as possible.
Absolutely.
But yeah, in doing so, they're really just trying to enrich themselves and their families in any way that they can, and to hell with the rest of us, right? And then there are sheeple that just follow their lead. They like what they hear, and they don't care what the truth is. They don't care what facts are. They just blindly believe, what they're told. Don't believe your lying eyes. Don't look behind the curtain. I am the Wizard of Oz. Blah blah blah. So, we're caught in this flux where we have people who know the truth. They seek facts. They research. They see the truth for themselves. And then there are those who are just lazy and just blindly follow whatever the leader tells them to believe. So that is sort of the problem there. Hopefully at some point, I do listen to a lot of I try to avoid the lamestream media and just listen to more underground media outlets like the BBC via YouTube, Al Jazeera, the Young Turks, and other progressive networks that aren't beholden to corporations that are funding them and padding their pockets and telling them to toe the line, and just they're more raw and truthful in their analysis of what's really happening with the world around us. And it's as scary as it is, it's just far more refreshing than to just be told that, oh, we're doing such a great job. And I think President Pumpkinhead recently said that we're doing more testing here than how can we? And it's like, oh God, whenever he occupies the lectern or the soapbox, I just my grandmother, God bless her, she's 97. I'm her caretaker.
Oh my God! Your grandma is still alive?
Not my dad's mom, but my mom.
Sure, it doesn't matter. Still, bless her, man. Bless her. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's amazing. She's like completely. She's more of her right mind than Trump, Biden, and all the rest of them, right? But she watches every day. She keeps on top of it. She said, "Oh, these are better than my stories, than my soap operas," because she used to watch those every day. Now she watches MSNBC, CNN. I try to get her to watch Fox News a little bit, although it kind of rubs her the wrong way, and I don't blame her. But it's important to know what the enemy is saying, and how they are trying to paint the picture of what's happening in the world today. But yeah, she's very mentally sharp and astute, and we have political debates nearly every day, just getting our feelings out and speaking our mind and our opinion about what all is happening. And but yeah, it's really hard. I like listening to Dr. Fauci. God bless him, because Lord knows he's probably, the latest in a series of human punching bags that, Pumpkinhead has been,
Well, I mean, Fauci will punch right back. He's not afraid. I do worry about when May 1st.
Well, because of the death threats and stuff that he's been.
Well, of course, but I mean that I want to.
For the guy.
I want to just focus on something, because I agree. You're a words. You are in your own way a wordsmith, and you watch your words carefully. But just break down what these words mean to you, because you use them as it relates to the people that you say they don't care and they're lazy. They don't care about the truth. These are people that are receiving information from cable news networks or their own, the places that they like to, take in news, or in their minds, the subjective news based on the political slant. But is it really about not caring or lazy? Because, I mean, to me, no baby. I mean, my daughters, they were not born to hate, and they are not raised to hate. That's cultural bias. So the idea there is, it seems almost like when you say people want to believe their own truth, is that really not caring and lazy, or is it just down to the fact that that's the way they were raised, and whatever code language?
Oh yeah, absolutely, in a large part, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not. Because when you watch them, I mean, I know Trevor Noah did this, Jay Leno did this many years ago, decades ago, when he had a show, and another, I'm blanking on the name of the late night show, but they literally went out and spoke to Trump supporters, and they, asked them certain questions about the president, the job that he's doing, etc., and they would pretty much quote back things that Trump had said. Oh, he's doing a great job, and blah, 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 and, he's building the wall, and he's, the economy's doing so well, he inherited a horrible economy, and they'd come back and say, well, actually, the economy was doing pretty well when he inherited it, from the Obama administration. No, that's not, and so it's like they come back at them with facts, and it's like they're impervious. They don't allow, you know what I mean? They don't allow anything they don't have an open enough mind to absorb factual information. They just keep quoting what they've been told at campaign rallies. And so my thing is, if they looked up or researched for themselves rather than just quoting what, President Agent Orange is saying, they would see for themselves, oh, well, actually, wait, maybe this is right. Maybe what I'm being told isn't, the gospel or the absolute truth. Maybe, I need to look a little bit deeper. But that never occurs to them. So rationale for why they would be so, adamantly against hearing another side or point of view. When they're presented with facts, then they raise their voice and they start shouting and they get angry. And
right.
It's like,
well, I mean, it's just,
so much, it's so backed by emotion instead of rationale that it's just kind of like, okay, well, I don't know if this is a fruitless endeavor or, it's really hard to see why they can't see what is really happening, why it's so easy to pull the wool over their eyes.
Because they ultimately, this goes back to, the original sin of the country, where you had, poor Europeans that, the rich white plantation owners said, well, you can have some of these black-skinned people to work your land, and in order for them to justify, for them to have a conscience about letting them work for slavery, they said, well, these people aren't Christians. They're beneath that. I mean, if they were Christians, their skin would be white. So, I mean, you're looking at something that in the back of these people's minds, this is stuff that they were taught. And, ultimately, Gia, it's like, I guess, I don't need to dwell on this, this, like, entire
aspect of the topic.
well, because it's not to me. First of all, I just want you to talk about how your father, how he showed love to you, and I'm trying to also figure out, like, we let in with Your Daddy Loves You, and I mean that's a song that I danced my younger daughter to sleep to quite a bit a few years ago, and I'm trying to figure out. Are you the one on the cover of that album, or because that?
Realize, yeah, that's me.
That's you, and so I'm like, this is so heartwarming for me because, like, I mean, it's. I just wanted you to talk about your father, as a father, and nothing more.
Oh, okay. Because the leading seemed like we were talking about, the world as a whole in our country and how this crazy pandemic is affecting all of us. But
well, no,
yeah,
because this is
my dad, it's personal, but I'm writing a book called Pieces of a Dad.
Wow, nice title.
Oh yeah, well he had the album, his first studio.
Yeah, I know very well. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so I feel that in a way, like, I got him in pieces. Unfortunately, because he was, first tailed by the FBI. He had a shadow not of his own making. They were, following him around. And
are you kidding me? I've never heard. Are you kidding me?
Absolutely not. I would not come on here to tell jokes. If I'm about to tell a joke,
You'll let me know. Okay, so
yeah.
I just want to be clear. You, because you are Gia. I just want to be clear. You were born. We're basically this. You look like you're maybe a year and a half old. I was born in '78, so we're roughly the same age.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So
right in there.
yeah, so when did you become aware that your dad was being, followed?
Oh no, this wasn't until I was. Oh my God, I only learned of this maybe 7 or 8 years ago.
Wow.
Like right after he passed away, there was a reporter, and I'm blanking on the name of the publication, but he was able to obtain via the Freedom of Information Act about 27 pages, some of them redacted, of the notes that the FBI agents took while they were following my dad and his bandmates. And when I spoke to Brian Jackson, like, he also, said that they were being followed, that there were people, parking their cars outside of, places they were living or places they were visiting, and followed because of technology and how advanced it is. But at the time, it wasn't hard to know if someone that you recognized was tailing you or whatever. And certain strange cars, parked outside of your living space or domain. So it's disturbing to know, but it happened. And that's what happens when you're a truth speaker, truth teller, and you gain a following. they start to fear you. They see you as a threat to what they have established, any threat to their power or their, to the hierarchy. It's,
Well, let me ask you. I
it has
just
to
for
be
just
dealt
for
with just like Malcolm X, just like MLK.
absolutely. No, I mean
Just like JFK. Anyone that disrupts the power structure is going to be in the line of fire.
Do you have any idea whether this was done during only during Nixon administration, or did it go across all party lines? I mean, that to me is fascinating. That because I mean, you watch a movie like Goodfellas, which is actually based on a true story, and that's the mafia. But those guys would go up to the cars and to the FBI cars and knock on the window and wake them up, and I could just see your dad going down there and being like, "What's up, guys? What are you looking for today?" Because I mean, I don't understand unless he was running some kind of, some sort of smuggling ring or doing something illegal. Aside from speaking the truth, what were they waiting? What was he doing that was so covert that they would have any right to do that?
I mean, I don't think that they care if it's something. I think they were waiting for him to slip up. I mean, they finally got him. There was a person that came backstage many times and, kind of coaxed my dad into trying. He had done, I guess, cocaine recreationally or whatnot, and they encouraged him to try the next level during the Reagan administration. And later, he was able to be charged with possession of that substance. And that's why I feel like I got him in pieces. There were, crack cocaine, it really, was brought in and did exactly what it was meant to do. Once it was brought into the inner cities and, folks, once they got a taste, they couldn't get enough, right? And many people went to jail and or died due to overdose. And it's criminal when people of color do it, but if it's something that affects, Caucasian community, Anglo-Saxons, then it's a crisis. And, we need to,
Absolutely.
Get resources and, rehabilitation centers. Then it's it's a mental illness type of thing. It's not criminal depending on who's doing it.
I mean, the meth issues that we had is a perfect example of it a few years ago, where it's like in these, rural white communities, you have to provide resources.
Well, and the opioid crisis as well.
Exactly.
Fentanyl and stuff like that.
Right.
Then it's like, oh no, it's affecting us, and that's the weird thing. Us doesn't necessarily mean the United States. Us just means a certain, section of the population of the United States. Depends on who it's affecting.
Now,
what kind of response that the government provides.
The book,
But my dad, he was there for me in as many ways as he could be, especially when he was incarcerated, towards in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, and whenever he came out, he was super lucid and super, I don't know, he had a lot of regrets about the past, but what was important to me was that we were able to address it and resolve it, which to me meant everything, because had he passed with those issues being, but he, was man enough to address those things with me and to let me know how sorry he was about those things, and that he wanted to be there for me and wanted me to not feel, because I had issues opening up to him, and he told me, I want you to always be able to say whatever you need to say to me, and I want you to always be able to talk to me, ask me whatever you need to ask me. I'm your pop, you know, and he's like, I don't want you to feel like you can't talk to me. I don't ever want you to feel that way because I love you and I'm always going to love you.
Your daddy loves you.
A
That's
lot of
beautiful.
times he wasn't a very mushy guy, but I think that he loved me in the best way that he could, which was through song. So whenever I was at his concerts, which was quite a bit, especially when I was young, because he came to the West Coast a lot in my younger years, and whenever I was in the audience, he made sure to sing "Your Daddy Loves You."
Okay,
and
I want to be very. This
was
is so much.
The easiest way for him to express his love for me was through song.
So I just want to be clear. I get this impression, from Realize and which is really some of his finest work he's ever done in my mind, on so many levels. But your mom, you guys live on the West Coast, and he lived in D.C. at the time. Is that right, or were you all living together?
I mean, from when they married, they lived in a house that used to belong to Roberta Flack in Alexandria, Virginia, and we had that home until 1983. And my parents legally separated, and we went to California, and then he ultimately, I think he went to D.C., but then to New York.
Right.
And that's where he spent the majority of his life, was, different parts of New York City.
Because the reason I ask it, because he was touring vigorously when you were around 6 or 7. He was always in Europe and things like that. And I recognized that when at the concerts he would play that song, but when it was based on the parenting plan, when he did have time with you, can you talk about some of the quality time that you guys would spend together? I mean, was he present as a father, even if it was not a lot of quantity, the time was quality? And what did you do?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of it's in my book, but that's what I ended up pretty much using as a way to kind of deal with the loss of my father, was that at least the time that we had together was very potent and important. The time that we spent, it wasn't a lot of time, but it was good time. You know what I mean?
Could you give one example?
One example, as a youth, there was a time that we went to dinner, and my mom went to go wash her hands, and my dad kind of was looking at me, and he's like, you're my girl, right? And I just nodded yeah. I was 8 years old or so. And he said, your mom tells me that you haven't been doing that great in school. And he's like, it's important that you do well in school. It's important that you show that you come from greatness. And he said, so don't ever let me hear from your mom or your grandma that you're not doing well in school. Because it's important that as brown people, we show our worth in everything that we do. And he's like, do you understand your daddy? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, okay. And he said, good grades, you do your homework, you do what your mom tells you to do.
Can you just? Sorry. You said he said, "Do you hear me?" And you said, "Yeah." And then did he do something to you? I'm sorry, I missed that part.
Oh, he slipped me a 20.
Okay.
He slipped me a little money and said, "You need to earn this."
Dude, wait. Hold on for a second. Let me ask you a question. Not that it was realistic. He was a creative and an artist and a free spirit, but I guess I'm dealing with this a little bit with my daughters now that in Tucson, where I live, school is closed for the year. I have to homeschool them. My younger daughter has some learning disabilities, so it's very tedious. But I mean, it's cool that he gave you a pep talk. But I mean, wouldn't you say that to go the extra mile would be if you really cared about your daughter's education and you weren't doing so well, that maybe you'd think that was maybe too much for your mom and grandma to handle, and that he could step in and help you with your work? I mean, don't you think that would be the next step as opposed? I'm just asking. I'm not judging here. It's just like, I'm just saying, like, I mean, for him to come in and say, that's cool, represent your people, be proud of your people, but I'm not going to be here to help you. Good luck. I mean, I'll give you a $20 bill and do good. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I knew that he was dealing with a problem. We would talk to his mom, my grandma Bobby, and we knew that. And what was really progressive in terms of their thinking, and that goes for not only my mom, but his mom as well as my mom's mom, my grandmother. They knew back then that it wasn't a choice, that it was an illness. And they kept telling me, your father is sick. Your father is ill. He can't help himself right now. So, we have to do what we can to help one another. And you have to do your part. So, yeah, it was sort of a thing like self-reliance. You can't expect other people to help you be you. Can't expect them to help you grow into the person that you're supposed to become. That's up to you in some parts. We're going to be there as, your maternal figures and influence. But, yeah, he's sick, and you can't hold him responsible for not being there. Because and that's the thing. Like, that was the government's grand design in introducing crack into communities of color, was to destroy the construct of traditional family. And
I completely agree with. No, I completely agree with you.
From a broken home, he came from a home that. Hold on just a second.
Sure.
Oh, that's my fiance. Anyways, so yeah, it was. It was a lesson that he learned and had to learn, in his time, and it was a lesson that I then had to learn. He didn't have any. He didn't have a model to follow when it came to being father. No one was there to teach him. There's no manual for it, as I'm sure you know.
No.
There's no instruction booklet on how to. So people have kids, and then they do the best that they can. And some of them succeed, and others not so much, So, yeah.
I just want to be clear.
The best thing would have been if he could have been part of my upbringing, but that wasn't in the cards. So you do the best that you can with the cards that you're dealt, right?
Gia, I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, I for the layperson, including myself, I've been, a lot of my focus of my show has been on, in fact, the second chapter of my third book is about the neighborhoods of black communities at the time of your father, and more in the late 60s and early 70s when you had Curtis Mayfield, Marvin Gaye, Donny Hathaway, your dad, although it sounds like your dad came from a broken home. The neighborhoods were righteously strong, and you'd get your ass kicked by a neighbor if you screwed up before you even got to your parents' house. There was a lot of accountability, and clearly the messages from these cats were very positive. They weren't projecting out the despair and the depravity and the anarchy of hip-hop, modern-day hip-hop. So there had to have been some sort of family construct. And when you talk about crack cocaine being introduced by the government, was that something that, I mean, you were a young girl, but can
Right.
you just talk, I mean, your dad got hooked on it, obviously, and he had a problem,
Right.
but how did that, just for somebody who was too, I just would like to know from your point of view, that how the government put that into the black communities. Obviously, I don't need to know how it destroyed the black communities, but it was a conscious decision by the Reagan administration to do it. And how did that? And how did you come to learn about this? And what did that look like in your mind? Because to me, this is like a very important demarcation point between, the ghetto. I remember talking to George Duke, and he grew up in Marin City, which now is like one of the highest per capita places in the country. But at the time, it was like, World War II barracks, really rugged housing for mainly black families. And he just said that it was a happy place. It wasn't a thrivingly diverse. I mean, it was just people looked out for each other. Neighbors looked out for other kids. This is pre-crack cocaine. This was not that it was perfect by any means, but all you have to do is listen to the lyrics of the Impressions and Marvin Gaye and your dad's earliest albums to recognize that the community may not have been rich, but truly spirit was the only currency.
Well, that's the thing. I think that when it comes to people of color versus this country, there's more than one way to be wealthy. This country very much pushes the idea that, you're only wealthy if you have, if you're a millionaire or a billionaire.
Exactly.
And just have, hundreds of thousands of dollars at your disposal. But there are many ways to be rich, and people of color, we're very resourceful, and we know how to make a lot out of a little.
I dig.
And we know how to fill in the gaps when there's something missing. And so, that's why Daddy says in his poem on coming from a broken home, he was damn near grown before he even realized that he came from a broken home. Because, he didn't realize that he was being raised not in a family setting that was, the, I guess, Caucasian-esque, idealized form of a home where there's a mother and a father and a couple of kids and a white picket fence and a pet. But he had what he needed, and he never wanted for anything in terms of, food, clothes, shelter, education. He had all of the basics that he needed in order to grow into, an intelligent, strong, capable human being. So, that's how we get down.
And material goods and things like that, it was always just like, it was not important. I mean, it was more about creating something.
It's nice to have those things, but it's not necessary. It's not, you don't live or die by whether or not you have a pair of Jordans as your sneakers versus, a pair of Nikes instead of a pair of Nikes.
I mean, was he a threat? I mean, it's so interesting because like I said, I've done 2 interviews with Brian, and he talked about, for instance, Winter in America. They cut that on Strata East, and they made that tune "The Bottle," and it was so explosively popular. But this was a label this was created by jazz musicians. They didn't have the ability to even get out. They couldn't get the product out. It was moving so fast. I mean, did your dad ever was one of the reasons, I mean, this is, how am I supposed to say this? I mean, he clearly was never reimbursed, or whatever the right word is. Monetarily, he never made what he deserved. But did he get to a point where he was obviously having commercial success, but was he a threat because not only was he somebody that was a wordsmith and was able to speak truth and clarity to many different people, but also because did he have some kind of because the point is that album Winter in America, they didn't get rich off of that because they didn't have the infrastructure to be able to do it.
Right.
Not that they wanted to get rich off it, but did your dad gain commercial success to the point where that made him an additional threat as well to the FBI?
Absolutely. I mean, they saw the potential for him to become, like another Malcolm X, like another MLK, like another Che Guevara, and, they just saw the following growing, and, yeah, they wanted to quash that before he gained any more traction.
And just to go back, just to ask from the question before, from what you knew from your grandma and your mom, even maybe your dad, after you guys really, which is so important, what you're talking about is having closure. Your closure is so key.
Right.
And, but how, I mean, was he literally like, so you're saying somebody came backstage that was an informant, and then the guy was like, yo, try this crack cocaine, and that was, your dad got hooked on it? Is that what happened?
Yeah, this was when I was extremely little. I was, I think, maybe 1 or 2 years old at most. And basically, he was a guy that always had access to the backstage and the green room. My mom didn't know how he, was able to obtain access, but he was always there, especially on the East Coast. And he would always be, like, hanging on my father, like have his arm wrapped around him, and was always whispering to him in the corner. And then my mom said they would leave the room, and my dad would come back, and my dad was, like, noticeably altered.
Yeah, blasted
and
out of his mind, yeah.
Grandma said one time when he was visiting her out here in California that a couple came by, and my dad came outside to greet them, and they all but shoved him in the car, and he disappeared for, I think, at least 2 days, 2 to 3 days, and he came back, and Graham said, yeah, that again, his whole demeanor, everything about him was different. Kind of like he was trying to hide the fact that he was high, but it was he still definitely wasn't him. And I always noticed when I was on the phone with him, he would say, oh, your pop just came back from the dentist, I just had some dental work done. And he'd be kind of mumbling and difficult to understand. I kept pointing to the phone and looking at my mom like, is it the connection? Or is it, and I knew, in the back of my mind what it really was that was causing me to have such difficulty understanding what he was saying. But yeah, he would always blame it on a dental appointment. He always had just come out of the dentist chair, and that was why he was mumbling.
Right, he had just ingested a lot of...
So he always had a ready excuse to kind of mask it, but at the same time, and we would just play along because there's no point in starting an argument saying, no, you didn't go to the dentist.
No, I totally dig. I mean, it's unreal. It's so beautiful to... Thank you for being vulnerable enough to share that. I mean, but again, I'm trying to figure out here. You said a guy was draped all over him, and Gil interpreted him as a buddy, or it turned out...
Well, over time, he gained a rapport. You know what I mean? He didn't just come out with it the very first time he met my dad. It was, over time.
Sure. No. And my question is, they were more interested in actually sabotage...
And, let me get you a drink and this and that. It starts small, and then it builds over time and grows. And, eventually he was able to convince my dad to try something different. Oh, if you think that, you're amazing now, but if you try this, then you'll really be able to tap into your third eye, and you'll really be blowing them away, and da-da-da-da-da, and this heightens your... this and that, and blah, 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 just really trying to sell it. And eventually my dad was like, what the hell?
that person turned out to be. So I just want to be clear.
Because then he wasn't there anymore.
No, but I just want to be clear though.
Really haven't, I guess he was a dealer or something. And once his job was done, that was it. Hooked him up with someone who could supply him with, what he needed when he needed it. And as mysteriously as he had arrived, he departed.
So I just want to get this in my head clear, is that this was a guy who got him hooked, and then he got him involved with the connection, and it was all done by our government to basically, they weren't going to arrest him, but they wanted him to become an addict to get him out of the picture because he was becoming a threat.
That's the theory. Yeah.
So it is. I mean, in fairness, it's we don't.
I've been told.
Okay, and that.
I was, like I said, I was too young to have been there and witnessed it for myself, but from those who were there and saw what was going on, that's what I've been told. So
yeah, it was much easier to get him to become a junk.
I put together based on what I've been told by my family members who were around and the bandmates who were around. I dig.
No, I mean, you think about it. You talk about that redacted, that the journalist who got those 26 pages from the FBI. Was there some, even the stuff that wasn't redacted, was there some revealing stuff in there? Because it makes sense. If they were going to arrest your dad, the fan base that he had grown, that would have been more revolution. That would have been more opportunity for him to have an outlet to inspire people. But better to get him hooked on junk and take the sting out of his potency.
Well, you give them enough rope to tie their own noose with, right?
Yep. That's right.
Yeah, so it's like you let them discredit themselves. You give them the tools so that they're silenced without you having really to lift a finger.
We have
so the threat is silenced without you having to come out and look like the bad guy.
The bottom line is that, at least in the story, though, the guy comes along, they develop a rapport, he hips Gil to the crack cocaine, and then after that, he passes him off to a dealer, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, but did your dad never actually was incarcerated until this century, is that right?
Right, because he got sloppy.
But
they caught him on possession.
Okay. So, okay, interesting. We have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I'm going to put this in for you right now. I want you to pay attention to the content, and then we'll come back and break it down.
Yes, there's one line in the whole song that really, if you don't get any other line in the song, the rest of it is a narrative about what happened, and it's based on the book We Almost Lost Detroit. But there is one line in the song that if you don't hear any others, just remember this. The line is, when it comes to safety, money wins out every time.
That's what exactly. That hits. That is as relevant today
Brian,
as it was. When was the book written?
1976, I believe.
Yeah.
Let me see. I'm checking.
Yeah, that is Brian. That was from my interview with him from May 21st, 2016. And at that time, you may or may not, I'm sure you remember it, but at that time, the crisis was the Flint water crisis that was happening in Flint, Michigan. So I was talking to him about the song based off the book We Almost Lost Detroit. And, I guess, Gia, I wanted you to talk, because listen, one reason we started the program talking about a lot of macro issues that no one person can truly change. But what we can change and affect positive change in our world and inspire people to be themselves, and empower people to be themselves, and that's what we can do. I can do that on the radio. I can do it, and you can do it in your own way. And I wanted you to talk to people right now, especially people of color, because these statistics are absolutely mind-boggling to see the amount of people that are dying from COVID-19, but then the percentage of those people who are, black or brown. And it's like, I just want you to give them not a message of hope, but more about how do you channel that so that they can advocate for themselves or their families if their family members are sick. I mean, what is the best avenue at this point to push back against this system?
Oh, that's a big question. Because it starts, like Michael Jackson said, with the man in the mirror, the person in the mirror. It starts with self. And so what you can do is exercise best practices in terms of keeping yourself, healthy and strong. If you feel, because this whole stay-at-home initiative that, people are pushing,
Yes.
it can be, it can lead to a state of isolation. It can affect your mental health.
Absolutely.
And your, your mental state of being. But reach out to people, just like we're talking over the phone. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier, and I was like, thank God. Oh, it was my friend Joe Keys. Shout out to Joe Keys.
Yeah,
I'm a
baby.
late bloomer fan. Woo, woo. We did a tribute for my dad 2 years in a row out in Bmore, Baltimore. I love Baltimore.
Great city.
And, and shouts out to Elijah Cummings.
Rest in peace, man.
He rest in peace and power along with my pops. But yeah, I got a lot of love for Baltimore. But yeah, it's you reach out to people. I was saying, thank goodness this isn't the 90s where all we had were Game Boys with AA batteries and Nintendo and stuff. We have the ability now to go live on Facebook, on Instagram. I have a YouTube channel that I want people to check out, Gia Scott-Heron on YouTube.
Beautiful.
I have several videos there of my different performances and poems that I haven't performed broadly in front of audiences that people can check out. But yeah, you can be your own voice and advocate. You don't have to sit around and wait for someone else to do it. If you have an idea that you think will help uplift yourself, the people around you, and the community, then go out and do it. I have a homegirl, Kat McGill, shouts out to her, and she is Pretty Simple Cat on Instagram. And every week on Sundays, she has what's called Screen Time Slam, and it's slam poetry that is done on Instagram Live, and she gathers 6 or 7 poets to, just playfully, it's a competition. People donate while they're watching the slam, and she leaves the donations open for a few hours afterwards, and people give, even if it's $1, $2, $5, $20, and the person who wins gets the pot, gets the donations. And that's a way to build community as well. People, tune in and watch the slam. They get to get inspired by these amazing poets spitting some of their best poetry. And there are just tons of ways. I'm planning on doing not only a tribute to my dad on May 27th, like a little mini concert with me and my friends, paying tribute to my pops, but yeah, there are tons of things that you can do. I'm going to do what's called COVID-free zone, because there's so much, you know what I mean?
Oh, I did, man. I did. Yeah, I did.
Starting in impact every aspect of our daily lives. You see it on the internet. You see it on all the social media platforms. You see it on the news. You see how certain TV programs are being postponed, and tons of my shows have been canceled. Other people that I know in the poetry community and the music community, entertainment, uplift the people, and continue to do what we do. It's kind of like how people of color have survived for so long without the traditional family structure. You just change the dynamic. You do what you need to do to fill in the gaps. You just, you change the paradigm. You do, you know what I mean? You see what can't be done, but you find a way around it. That's one of the reasons
but you're channeling your people's history. That's what you told me before, where it's like, you guys were self-sufficient. You found ways of entertaining yourselves and creating and becoming successful without a lot of resources. And it's the same. It's now we have certain new media. And by the way, I just subscribed to your channel, so please reciprocate and do it on mine, because I look. It'll be great to see you kick this stuff off. I agree. 9 years ago, I started my show, and I had no idea. I didn't have my voice. I didn't know what direction I was going in. I just knew that I could see and I could feel, more importantly, that we were headed in a very toxic direction. I didn't know where we were going to wind up, but we're here now. And and so that was something that was created out of nothing, and as a result, my first book was published in November, called The Cats, Volume 1, and then my second book's about to come out. So I'm just now the content can beginning to flow, and to feel less isolated if your kids have. It's an interesting time, because we're in these Judeo-Christian holidays now of Passover and Easter, and for a lot of people it's like, they're just used to, it's a chance for people to have time off from work. It's a chance for people to congregate and be together, but not this year. And so the question is, how creative can you be with no resources? And I think, or how can you think up something to be creative about, to inspire not just
find a way to be together in another way.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And I've been
togetherness does not necessarily have to mean that you are physically in the presence of other people. I think that's what these digital platforms have shown us. There's a way to build togetherness minus the physical, contact. And thank God that we have the technology to make these things possible, and we just got to utilize it to the best of our abilities for the greater good.
I have I could not.
And in the COVID-free zone, I'm just going to talk about anything but the virus. You know what I mean? Just things we used to do as kids, funny traditions that we have, different aspects of life that, I think are just interesting and funny and unusual. Talk about those things. You know what I mean?
I think
just to take your mind off of it for a little bit, 20, 30 minutes a day.
I've done so many.
To remind people to meditate, and even if they're not traditionally a person who writes, you can even do like a voice memo of something that you thought of that you thought was interesting. Or if you want to get into writing, start writing. Start writing about how you feel, how this virus has affected you, for better or for worse. Explore those things and get it out, because it's better out than in. And because if you bottle it up and let it fester, it can become a more toxic situation.
I just want
like tuning into your radio program, tuning into different things on YouTube. If there's something that you've always wondered about but never looked into, start researching it. If there's a hobby that you meant to pick up and you haven't had time because of the daily hustle and bustle and the daily grind, do that. You know what I mean?
I dig.
There are people that are turning their backyards into mini farms where they're planting things like tomatoes, beets, carrots, different things like that. So those are things that you can do to occupy your time, get your mind off of, the situation that we're in, look at it as an opportunity. Now we got nothing but time, so what are you going to do with the time that you've been given? Don't look at it as a curse. Try to look at it as a blessing.
I mean,
maybe a blessing in disguise, but a blessing nonetheless.
It's
all about how you choose to look at things.
Yeah, I mean, the world's been turned upside down, but not for me, because essentially I recognized, sort of the idea of that we were losing human connection. And I can't think of a worse thing than to get on and to be bloviating or talking about myself. The goal of my program is to reach into the minds of people like yourself and pull out stories that are going to inquire about new information, new history, inspire people about things that they didn't know about. And I think that, what you just said, literally, you could transcribe that into a song or a poem. I would also say to people, it's not just just start writing, because quite frankly, that's anxiety provoking if you don't like to write. But what you can do, like you said, is just riff into a voice memo and then transcribe that, because oftentimes people speak better than they write, but they have to be, here's the point, we go back to the original part of the conversation, you have to be aware of that. You have to actually your mind has to be thinking. You have to be aware of it. It's not about not caring or being lazy or just being fed a pile of garbage and assuming that's correct. So there has to be a revolution of consciousness, and these rigid thought patterns that have built up in a lot of people have to be broken down. That is still the existential crisis. But like what we did now for the last 63 minutes will bring a lot of joy to people. And Gia, I look forward to continuing the conversation. I'm not sure when the book is coming out, but I look forward to having you come on after it comes out.
That would be terrific. Thank you.
And
absolutely. I'm working on it. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm hoping by the end of this year, 2020. But yeah, I'm writing daily and adding things to it daily, because there are so many things that continue to happen in the present day that relate back to my father and our connection and conversations that we had. And yeah, because people keep asking me, what would your dad think about, President Pumpkinhead being elected, and what would he think about this current crisis that we're in? And my thing is, I know that why they're asking me, but it's kind of like I can't speak for the ancestors really, even though they sometimes use me as a way to speak through me. My thing is, unless you want to hold a seance, your guess is as good as mine. You know what I mean? I can't put words into the mouth of the dead, but I feel like, I don't know, it's like, what do you think about what we're going through right now,
Well, I'm just looking at this from, I'm trying to find the right quote here, because it's exactly.
I know he wouldn't be surprised, but,
Well, he's always been, once you reach a level of fame or stardom, this is what Brian told me in the first interview. He said, Gil had a very strong personality and was very outspoken. Some people might say he was arrogant, and I wouldn't necessarily argue with him about that. Gil could also be a very kind person, a very real person. Some of the pressures of being Gil Scott-Heron eventually made him resentful of the role that people had given him, which is not something that he himself did intentionally assume. When W was elected, I would see people tweeting, the second George Bush is now president. I can't wait to see what Gil Scott-Heron has to say about it. Really? You have to wait to hear from Gil Scott-Heron to say what is wrong with that? People would always ask him, what do you think about the Iraq War? The answers were so obvious that you didn't really need anybody to tell you that. Nevertheless, They wanted him to say it in his way, in a way that was entertaining. he was able to put all of these things into a size of a soundbite that you could carry around with you. That's kind of good in a way, but not if that precludes you from having dialogue with other people about it. That is what has to happen. We have to have a dialogue about these things. We have to come together about these things, not just have someone say something really ironic and funny about it so that it amuses you, and then that's it. That's all you do. I mean, you know, so that's exactly, I think the whole message from Gil Scott-Heron, and he is no doubt looking down on this conversation, is think for yourself. You know, come up with your own pith.
My dad's whole, you know, musical career was to try to promote people, and that's what I've done with, you know, me being his offspring and continuing his legacy. Is like, I want to promote critical thought, and I want to promote, you know, positivity, but also, you know, I just want to, you know, help people think critically about the world and their place in it. And, not necessarily wait for someone to be a voice for you. I want to help people find their own voice.
Exactly. And you know what? I mean, that's the whole thing about Barack Obama is like one person can't do it alone. And I think that was the reality check. It was like, are you kidding me? He needs like 60 he needs like 60 leaders around him to be successful. Why are you expecting one person to do it? And why can't you come up with your own objective opinions? And these are the things that we are as light workers can do. So I'll also do this. And I think
that's kind of what I meant by laziness. It's like we sit around and we wait for someone else to speak up and be a voice for us, when all you have to do is make the decision to stand up and speak your mind.
And and here's the thing. I mean, Gia, you've been on.
The bravery. It just takes. I know it takes a lot of courage to get up and say something, but you know, if you get motivated or inspired to do it, ain't nothing to it but to do it.
Listen to you. Well, I mean, also, I just want to be clear that
I get nervous sometimes when I'm about to go on YouTube or about to go live, but you just take a deep breath and you dive right in.
You know, I just want to say for those people, I mean, in truth, to do something sophisticated on your own that's going to resonate, people need to realize we live in an instantaneous time where information is received immediately. People expect things done immediately. That's one of the crises now, is that they want to reopen the country because, quote unquote, things happened yesterday. I mean, it's a joke. But here's the point. If you want to do something on your own, recognize that it's going to take at least a couple of years for you to find your voice. So you're going to have to fall down and fail a little bit. I mean, I listen back to my interviews.
And I think that's what makes people fearful in the first place. Thank you for saying that. Thanks for saying that, Jake, because it's very true. People are afraid of failure. Right. And they're afraid of other people's opinions. Right. They're afraid of the trolls. They're afraid of, you know, rejection, negative comments, and things like that. But it's, I don't know, you have to weigh what's more important to you. Are other people's opinions of you more important than what you feel you have to say, or is it the other way around?
And I mean, and you know what? If you really believe in something, I mean, listen, some spiritual,
Doing it enough to hell with what others think or have to say about it. It's your truth. Speak your truth.
Speak your truth, and and you know what? Just recognize that it's
your own advocate.
I mean, people went after when I started to do some really deep dives with Stanley Clark and people like that, and he was talking about Scientology and overcoming drug addiction. You know, people would go after me. They'd be like, "Where is this from?" And I'd have to provide the link to the radio interview. Because I mean it's all radio interviews, so they can just stream it. But also, people would still harangue me about my grammar, and I'm like, you know, you're missing the whole damn point. You're missing the point. The point is that it is about, like, what do you have to say for yourself? And I just want people to know, because I think there's a lot of people that this is a major time of awakening, could be, but to recognize that to cultivate something will take a little while. You're not just going to be able to jump into it. So be cool, be easy, and know that it's okay to fall down, because you'll pick yourself back up again and you'll move forward. It's okay to sit in the mess, and you have to do that now if you want to stay centered. So, Gia, we'll be in touch. It was so nice to talk to you. You made my day, and
Thank you.
I'm going to get this up online later, and I'll be transcribing a lot of these stories you told and putting them up. And also, I will send you my transcriptions of my interviews with Brian, because there might be some pertinent stuff from those interviews that you may want to include in the book. And yeah, let's just stay in touch. It was such a high honor to talk to you, and I feel so blessed to be able to be connected to the lineage of Gil Scott-Heron after he's healed me so many times on my path.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad to hear that. And yeah, it's always good to talk to a fan. And yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you reached out to me and that I reached back. And that's what people have to do during this, difficult, rough patch that we're going through. Don't be afraid to reach out.
Bless you, Gia.
Thank you.
All right, have a good day later on.
Okay.
Bye.
You too, man.
Bye.
All right. Peace.
Later. Peace. Gia Scott-Heron, filling in the gaps. Thanks for tuning in. That's the Jake Feinberg Show. See you tomorrow.